Okay, picture this. You're in a situation where the world literally feels like it's crashing down around you. Maybe it's a high-stakes meeting where everyone's losing their minds, a sudden financial hit that just comes entirely out of left field, or a personal confrontation that gets your heart pounding so hard it feels like it's going to kick its way right out of your chest. We've all been there, right? And what do most of us do in those moments? We do exactly what we're biologically programmed to do. We panic, we freeze up, or we let our emotions completely hijack our brains, making decisions we inevitably regret about 10 minutes later. Well, today, we're looking at a completely different approach. Throughout this explainer, I'm going to introduce you to the Foshin Protocol. It's an ancient Japanese framework, and it's designed to help you achieve a mind that does not move, no matter how hard the wind is blowing outside. We're going to explore how building this profound inner stillness doesn't just help you survive the chaos, it actually makes you the most effective person in the room while everyone else is falling apart.
But before we get into the exact strategy that legendary swordsman Miyamoto Musashi used to stay undefeated in over 60 life-or-death duels, I have a serious question for you. What breaks your focus? I want you to think about that one specific situation that always, without fail, seems to derail you. Is it a passive-aggressive email from your boss? Is it watching your bank balance drop? Whatever it is, identify it right now in your head. Actually, you know what? Declare it. Because when you identify and declare these triggers, you're not just venting, you are actively sending a signal to your brain that the days of reacting on pure autopilot are officially over. You're putting yourself back in the driver's seat.
So here's the roadmap we'll use for this explainer to build that undefeated mindset. 1. Surviving the storm. 2. Eliminating weak dependencies. 3. The everyday mind. 4. Permanent consciousness. And 5. The mind that never moves. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Surviving the Storm. The story of Lucas. Meet Lucas. He was a regular engineer, but he was incredibly mentally fragile, living entirely on autopilot and reacting to every tiny spark of stress like a dry forest just waiting to catch fire.
But everything flipped upside down for Lucas when he discovered Foshin. Foshin is that ancient Japanese framework for achieving a mind that does not move, no matter how hard the wind blows. It's all about training your nervous system to actually tell the difference between literal, physical danger and just simple discomfort. It's the exact same framework Miyamoto Musashi leaned on to stay dead-centered in the middle of mortal combat.
Now, to build these kinds of deep roots and completely rewire his nervous system, Lucas couldn't just sit around wishing for it. He had to follow a rigid, actionable protocol. Step 1, elimination. Step 2, Hayoshin. And Step 3, Zanshin. Let's break down exactly what each of these means and how they stack on top of each other.
Section 2. Eliminating weak dependencies. Built on sand. So the very first step in the protocol is the principle of elimination. Lucas had to take a really hard look in the mirror and admit that his discipline was built on sand, mainly because it relied entirely on having perfect conditions.
There's this absolutely crucial quote from Musashi: "You must have no preferences and depend on no particular weapon." Think about what that actually means. If your strength relies entirely on comfort, like needing a perfectly quiet room or exactly 8 hours of sleep, you aren't actually strong. You're just lucky, and you're only lucky until the wind changes direction. The second the environment shifts, that fragile discipline completely crumbles.
To build real Foshin, you have to actively destroy those dependencies. And that's exactly what Lucas did. He started going out to train in the pouring rain. He forced himself to sit down and do deep work when he was physically exhausted. He purposefully chose to meditate in a noisy, distracting room instead of some perfectly silent sanctuary. By deliberately exposing himself to these really uncomfortable conditions, he put the principle of elimination to work, crushing the weak dependencies that were keeping him so fragile.
Section 3. The everyday mind. Non-reactive observation. Now, let's slow the pace down for a second and look at the second phase, which is all about what you should do when the panic actually strikes.
This brings us to Hayoshin, which loosely translates to the everyday mind. This is the practice of non-reactive observation. Musashi taught that a warrior's mind in the absolute heat of a bloody battle should be exactly the same as when they're just sitting peacefully, drinking tea. No wild excitement, no gripping panic, just pure, unfiltered presence. So when Lucas felt a panic attack creeping up during a tense meeting, he stopped trying to fight it. Instead, he just watched it. He noticed his racing heart. He felt his palms getting sweaty. But he did it with zero judgment and zero reaction. What's genuinely fascinating about this is how modern science is totally backing up this ancient samurai wisdom.
Research out of Stanford shows that this specific practice of non-reactive observation literally rewires your amygdala to raise your panic activation threshold. So by just observing his body's physiological responses without freaking out about them, Lucas changed his brain. The stuff that used to trigger a full-blown panic attack started to just trigger a mild sense of recognition. He stopped being a fragile leaf blowing in the wind and became the quiet observer of the storm. Section 4. Permanent consciousness. Closing the gaps. Moving into our third step, we have to talk about a massive vulnerability that opens up the exact second a stressful situation is resolved.
Step 3 is Zanshin, or permanent consciousness. It means maintaining your awareness even after the battle is won. Think about it. Most people survive a brutal meeting or solve a huge problem, and what's the first thing they do? They immediately tune out, grab their phone, or throw a mini celebration. They drop their guard completely. But the Foshin Protocol says absolutely not. Musashi warned his students that a battle doesn't end just because the enemy falls. It only truly ends when you are fully safe.
So how do we adapt that for today? The magic number is 60. 60 seconds. Lucas practiced Zanshin by forcing himself to stay entirely present for just 60 seconds after finishing a high-stress task. Instead of instantly diving into his phone for a cheap dopamine hit, he just sat there in the moment. And by doing that, he integrated the mental strength he had just used. He stopped creating these tiny mental gaps where his old, fragile self could easily sneak back in and take over.
Section 5. The mind that never moves. The ultimate test. All right, we've reached the culmination of this explainer where the protocol gets hit with a real-world hurricane.
The ultimate result of mastering these 3 steps is Foshin, the mind that does not move. Honestly, you can think of it kind of like a giant, ancient tree. The tree is quiet, but not because the wind has stopped blowing. It's quiet because its roots are so incredibly deep. Well, for Lucas, his new roots were about to be tested. Big time. On day 105 of his training, out of absolutely nowhere, Lucas was pulled into a sudden meeting and told he was being laid off. Just like that, his job was gone.
And the contrast here is just night and day. The old Lucas, he would have immediately spiraled into these catastrophic worst-case scenarios. He would have panicked, hyperventilated, and desperately tried to negotiate with a reality he had zero control over. But the new Lucas, the guy with the deep roots, he just sat there, perfectly still. He felt the initial shock, he recognized it using Hayoshin, and then his mind just stayed quiet. He calmly went home, updated his resume, tapped into his network, and actually secured a way better job within weeks, all while his former co-workers were still completely paralyzed by the shock of the layoffs.
Let's be clear, Lucas didn't survive that crisis because he just got lucky. He survived it because he applied Sutemi. Sutemi basically means abandoning the need for a specific outcome so you can focus entirely on the practice itself. He literally removed the option of failure by sacrificing the fragile version of himself that constantly needed to negotiate with reality. Now, fair warning, this level of intense discipline often makes ordinary people super uncomfortable. People actually started calling Lucas too serious or even scary. But that was only because his unbreakable discipline acted like a mirror, reflecting their own weaknesses right back at them. When your discipline makes other people uncomfortable, for sure, you know you're operating on the right level.
So I want to leave you with a final provocative challenge straight from this ancient wisdom. It's time to stop looking for the easy way out and start building your own deep roots. Pick one really difficult situation you're dealing with right now and totally abandon your need for a specific outcome. Make a public oath. Seriously, type it out in the comments right now. I will not react, I will only respond. By doing that, you trigger your brain's survival response, you commit to the path, and you finally sacrifice that fragile person you used to be. Stay sharp, stay present, and I'll see you next time.